I'd like to talk a little bit about control theory. Now, this may seem a little bit far away from system quality management, but if we're dealing with systems, we need to have some understanding of how they are controlled. Systems do come with many interacting second and third order effects, and the problem is that dealing with the primary causes in systems tends not to be that effective. You tend to get secondary effects and follow on from that. So it can be difficult to determine the root cause of what's happening, the root cause of the effects, and difficult to determine where you should intervene and how you should intervene in order to control these systems. So this is where control theory comes in. It derives from various attempts to have a look at how organizations are controlled and how control is exercised within organizations. Now, obviously, this does happen, but the question is, well, how does it happen and why does it happen? Now, the most general form of control is control by goals. That is, you have people agree on the goals that are going to be achieved. You could say this is controlled by beliefs. If people share the same beliefs, then they'll steer toward the end point of those beliefs would have you follow. Now that, in control theory terms, it's called control by goals. You set the goals and people steer toward that. Now you can see this in organizations where an organization has an overall strategy or an overall reason for being. The best ones tend to be very simple and explain to everybody what the business is for. For example, an airline exists to transport things from place to place. Some airlines exist to transport people, and their primary business is transporting people. One of the side effects is transporting goods. Other airlines exist to transport goods, so their role in life is to transport goods from place to place. Some organizations exist, say the Surf Life Saving Association in Australia. They exist to prevent people coming to harm at the beach, or if they are in trouble, to get them out of trouble. So the whole reason for the Surf Life Saving movement is water safety at the beach. A university's primary purpose in life, you could argue, well, its primary purpose is to do some research or it's to teach. Take your pick. One of the simplest ones I've heard of was from a retailer here in Sydney. The retailer happens to be Harvey Norman. And he expressed it very succinctly. And he said, "We sell things for people's homes." Now that tells everybody in the organization what they do, what kind of things they sell, what kind of things they don't sell, and just made life very, very straightforward for people. So this is an example of control by goals. Now in software development, you can have the organizational goals, which can be the vision statement, as I just said. You can have the cultural beliefs. So the national culture, the international culture, the organization culture, the team culture, or personal culture. Now, personal culture, I'm talking about things like collection programmers have some idea of how programmers ought to behave. This has nothing to do with the team. This is just this group of people who have some similar beliefs believe this is the way you ought to do things. There are also project goals. Talking about the project schedule, budget, quality, scope. They are goals, and these are ways of dealing with it. There also are goals expressed implicitly in the rewards and recognitions within a company. Now, probably there was a famous paper by William Oichi, published, I think it was in the mid-1950s, but he had a look at this whole problem of control within an organization. He was puzzled why it took so few people to manage the ordering of things and so many people to manage the inventory of the ordered goods. So he looked at it and he came up with a couple of varieties of control. Kathleen Eisenhardt looked at it later and proposed a similar but slightly different terminology. The varieties of control they came up with was output control, behavior control, and input control. Output control is controlling things by the outputs the systems make. Examples of this, this happens when the outputs of whatever activity it is are easy to measure, but the method of achieving those outputs are difficult to specify. Examples are selling things. It's easier to measure how many things get sold. So with real estate, for example, you just pay on commission. It's difficult to say to a salesman, you do this and then you do this and then you do this. There's just so many exceptions. It's much easier to simply say, well, you sell it, whatever means you sell it, and we'll pay you a commission when you do sell it. So this is an example of output control. More generally, contracts are a form of output control. That is, we will contract that you will deliver this thing, probably this time to this level of quality. But what is to be achieved is specified. How it is to be achieved is not. The behavior control is probably the most general, and this is where the outputs are somewhat varied and possibly a little difficult to specify, but the manner of doing the work can be specified. The original example that William Oichi gave was of managing inventory. It was kind of hard to specify exactly what the inventory was, the state of it, and at any one time. But it was reasonably easy to describe the responsibilities of people dealing with the inventory itself. It happened that it required many more supervisors because the variability in the actual behavior that went on. Nevertheless, that was probably the way of doing it. Now, behavior control is the most common form of control. You can see this in our procedures manuals, the order equivalent, the description of how you do the work. There might be some expectation of what the work is to achieve, but nevertheless, there is a considerable amount of effort goes into specifying exactly how you're supposed to do the work. This is behavior control. It's specifying the behaviors that are expected. Now, this is reasonably good when the behavior can be specified sufficiently well, but the output of that behavior is not so easy to specify in all circumstances. The third one is the input control, and this is where the consequences and the behaviors are kind of difficult to specify. Think in terms of trying to control a surgeon. Now, what they're supposed to do and what they're supposed to achieve is probably best decided by the surgeon themselves. It's very difficult to decide or to impose on the surgeon how they're going to go about their work and what they're going to achieve, because the reason why they're a surgeon is because they're best placed to advise. In input control, it is the input to the system that is controlled. So in the case of the surgeon, they're expected to have particular qualifications, they're expected to be approved by a professional body, that professional body is expected to have standards, and is expected to maintain those standards. So we get the medical association in this country, and you can be barred from membership of that. If you're not a member, you can't practice medicine. We also have many professional society, namely, or mostly, the Society of, say, Professional Engineers. This is in here, the Australian Institute of Engineers, or Engineers Australia. We have the Australian Computer Society, we have the Law Society. All of these are professional bodies that tend to decide what is the expected level of qualification and professional conduct of their members. And this is input control. It's probably the most loose of them all, and probably tolerates the most sloppiness. But they are the current means of controlling organizations. I haven't heard of any others. I also have to comment that it's rare to find a single form of control applied. Most organizations have at least two, if not three. So, for example, the organization itself would have a vision statement and have some declaration about what it's intending to achieve, which is goals, controlled by goals. It would have some expectation of what is to be produced, and it's goals by output control. It has some idea and some specification of how you are intended to behave, so that's behavior control. And it also exercises some control over recruiting the people and maintaining probably their belief systems within the organization, which is input control. So you'll find a mix of all of them around the place, but in some circumstances tend to favor one or the other.